The playoffs are here, and you can predict the action all the way to the finals with FanDuel Predicts. Predict the spread, the total points, and even the game-winning moments that make the playoffs. Sign up and get a $25 bonus with FanDuel Predicts.
Offered by FanDuel Prediction Markets, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant. 18 plus bonus is non-withdrawable and expires 7 days after receipt. Trading derivatives involves significant risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Manage your activity with their consumer protection tools. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/predicts/bonus-offer-terms.
Cats and Cosby, entertaining and informative
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Well, today was a special day. We had the Prime Minister of Canada and Mr. Carney and myself and Ed Cox attended. And Ed Cox, tell us about it. And we were there, both of us at the head table there. And
John, we had front row seats to a major address. Prime Minister of Canada. Addressing the United States-Canadian relationship. He called for a new partnership, which would be a true partnership, where we deepen it in certain areas, but that Canada would also diversify its partners around the world with whom it traded.
And I talked to a lot of people, and he said, well, what was the message out of there? And it was a great message out of there. The message was the fact that a strong Canada makes America a stronger.
That's exactly. It can make America great. It can be part of making America great.
Even greater.
Yes,
even greater.
No, it's a great message because look, there are names. He's an impressive guy, Mark Carney.
He was the
head of Bank of Canada,
and then the only Brit who was not the governor of who was the governor of the Bank of England.
That's an interesting,
it's 300-year history.
So historic.
Yeah.
And 24th Prime Minister.
And he spoke
sharp.
like a banker.
Yes.
He'd been an investment banker at Goldman Sachs for 13 years, and so he took a very highbrow approach.
Yeah, very interesting. And it's an important time, of course, with U.S.-Canada relations, so that's a big... Did he bring up tariffs, too? Because that's a big issue.
He did talk tariffs that were the highest since the Great Depression. So he was really critical of high tariffs.
Yeah, and we knew that he'd go there on that particular one. What about also Iran? Did he bring up any of foreign policy stuff? I'm curious.
No foreign policy stuff.
Didn't do that.
It was all about
economics.
Canada doing business all over the world and using its assets, using its minerals, using its energy and
the minerals, critical minerals,
I thought about that
partnerships
too, right.
like that, exactly.
And he especially talked about this partnership with the United States and how it's a real love partnership because we've been doing this forever and we depend on each other.
He spoke of American ideals. He praised American ideals and the historic relationship between Canada and the United States. And he spoke about how they were stepping up their defense is now at 4% of their
They're going to 5%.
Of their GDP, of their budget, and it's going to be 5%.
Oh, that's good news. That's great. Yeah. That's really interesting, you guys. That's very powerful.
And in the studio with us too today is we have Governor David Paterson. Governor, welcome to the studio.
Thank you. I'm not Canadian, but I'm glad to be here.
And also former Supreme Court Judge Richard Weinberg.
Who's not Canadian either.
Some of my best friends are Canadian.
Okay, good.
So he's in.
Yeah, we all have good friends that are Canadian.
We do. I love Canada. And you guys, speaking of sort of international news, there's some other news coming from the White House.
Breaking news, WABC.
And just a little bit ago, they were announcing that the U.S. and Iran, there are reports that they are reaching some sort of a ceasefire extension deal. The big question is President Trump hasn't signed it yet. They've talked about what the criteria would be to even have this extension. They're looking at it like a phase one of a obviously multiple phase process. And this may be, they say they've come to terms, at least there are multiple reports on a whole bunch of networks saying they've at least reached some tentative terms that maybe opens the door to real discussions about nuke, obviously the material that's there in the ground and future nuclear development. But today, Scott Bessent, who ran the White House press briefing, said the 100% thing before we can even do anything is the Strait of Hormuz must be open. He was sort of the, quote, Caroline Leavitt today. Remember, we had Marco Rubio one time, and then we had J.D. Vance one time, the vice president. Well, today was Scott Bessent's turn. And he said that obviously opening the strait is key. The other thing that was really big that he also brought up was that maybe they will start going after Iranian flights. This is interesting. The two airlines making sure that they can't do stopovers, they can't do refueling, they can't. I mean, they're really trying to economically squeeze Iran.
Then the other big thing going on is sanctuary cities, and the fact is that I'm having
Jim Jordan.
Jim Jordan is on, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, about sanctuary cities, and he's going to be an interesting guy. He'll be on in a few minutes. Also, who was the person that said that they're not going to allow international? If there's going to be sanctuary cities in New York and New Jersey, they don't trust sending international flights in there, because then people could fly in, and we might have some bad people.
Secretary DHS.
Mark Wayne Mullen. Mark Wayne Mullen came out.
If some bad people came in to JFK and
they get off the plane,
get off the airplane, and we let them go.
Then what?
They end up in a sanctuary city.
Then you have to chase. Then you have to chase them down in the streets.
Exactly.
So does that mean that JFK Airport could be shut down to international flights?
It could be JFK, Newark, Chicago, LA. Think about all the cities. Gov.
Well, I think one of the alternatives would be that the security for the arriving flights is beefed up, and the passengers are probably going to be angry because they had to wait 3 or 4 hours. But if they're cleared, at least they'll get in, and those who shouldn't be getting in hopefully will be apprehended.
Well, and the issue is he's also saying not only will he maybe consider blocking it for who's coming in and out, but he's saying maybe also we have to put the resources, because the detention centers are having all these massive protests. Did you see what was going on in the New Jersey one last night? This is scary.
It's all political theater. It's all political theater, Rita.
It is so frightening, though, because I agree with you. It is political theater, but these groups are getting riled up. They had Antifa
activists in those groups.
100%, and we're going to definitely talk about that with Peter Schweitzer and John Solomon today. We also have Greg Jarrett. I can't wait to ask Greg about this action you talked about, Judge, with Mark Wayne Mullen. Is it legal?
Exactly right.
And then what about Jill Biden, you guys? Oh, my goodness. Jill Biden, who said, on the night of that famous debate with President Trump, she said, I was so worried my husband wasn't acting normal. I thought he had a stroke, but I've never seen him out of it like that before or after.
She may be changing her story. Now she's talking about she was afraid that he might have been drugged. That's another story.
But never out of it before. Go ahead, Gov.
If Muhammad Ali were here, he would call him Strokin' Joe.
Good line. I loved Muhammad Ali. Wasn't he the best?
He was the best.
He was the Thriller in Manila.
But I love Governor Patterson.
I agree. Well, you guys, we have calling in right now Congressman Jim Jordan, and I understand he's got a lot to say on sanctuary cities. John?
Thursday night. What is today is Jim Jordan, and he is chairman of the House Judiciary Committee in Congress. And, Chairman Jordan, what the heck is going on with the sanctuary cities? I mean, is there a civil war going to happen? I mean, there's no such thing as sanctuary cities. Professor Dershowitz was on with us the other day, and he says there is no sanctuary cities. This is a created dogma. You tell us.
Right. Well, it's part of good to be with you, John. It's part of a systematic plan, multi-step plan the Democrats have, and you can see them executing it. It started with, in the Biden administration, letting in 10 million illegal migrants. Step 2 was to create these sanctuary jurisdictions all over the country, which makes it difficult to remove those migrants when they commit another crime. And then step 3 is don't pay the guys who do the removing. Don't fund ICE, which is something we're dealing with right now because the Democrats won't fund our ICE agency and Customs and Border Patrol. And then finally, a 4th step, which is happening now in your city, happening in all kinds of blue cities around the country. Step 4 is these prosecutors treat illegal migrants who commit crimes differently than Americans. We had Steve Descano, the prosecutor in Fairfax County, Virginia, who is giving better plea deals, lesser sentences to migrants who commit a crime because he doesn't want to affect their deportation status. That is just wrong. That is unconstitutional. So we're looking at all these cities with Krasner in Philadelphia, Alvin Bragg in New York, looking in Boston, all these cities, and finding out, are they doing the same thing? Because it sure looks like they are, where they're treating people differently based on their immigration status, based on whether they're a citizen or not, and giving preferential treatment to non-citizens. But it's all part of the crazy left systematic plan when it comes to illegal migration.
Understood. But I don't understand then what's going to happen. Is there going to be a confrontation between the federal authorities and the state city authorities?
Well, we're already seeing that in New Jersey. You're seeing all these left-wing agitators, in some cases members of Congress, showing up at the facility there harassing ICE agents. You're seeing it happen all over the country. It's not enough that they don't pay ICE agents. They're actually now, for months now, they've been doxing them and tracking them and harassing them and going out and confronting them and spitting on them and all kinds of things that they're doing to these agents. What we're trying to do in Congress is we've actually passed legislation out of our committee that says if you're one of these sanctuary jurisdictions, you're not going to be eligible for certain federal grants. If you're one of these sanctuary jurisdictions, you let some illegal migrant out who should have been prosecuted, and they cause harm to some individual or family, then they have a private right of action, private cause of action against that city or state or against that sanctuary jurisdiction. So it's a good bill. It's called the Sanctuary Jurisdiction Shutdown Act of 2026. It's passed our committee. We're looking to get it past the floor and over to the Senate ASAP.
And do we need 51 votes in the Senate or 60?
No, you'll need 60, unfortunately.
Is there enough Senate? Is there enough Democratic senators that are going to go along with this, or are we going to be stuck?
Well, hopefully. We got to get it through the House first, which I think we can. I think it'll be a party line vote, which is kind of crazy. But remember, back early in this administration, early in President Trump's second term, we passed the Lake and Riley Act, and we did get Democrats who would support that bill, which was making sure that we treated people prosecuted people the way they should be prosecuted. So that was a good bill, and we did get some Democrat support there. So maybe there's a chance. But step one is make sure we get it through the House first. Agreed so much. Anything else you want to tell the people on a Thursday night? No, it's a great country, 250 years, the greatest country ever, and we should, in spite of all the crazy things we see from today's left, we should always remember that, 250 years ago, this July 4th, they started this amazing experiment in freedom we call America, and it's a special, special place. Chairman Jim Jordan, thank you for calling in this Thursday night, and we'll catch up with you again real soon. Maybe we'll talk on Sunday. Thank you so much.
Great conversation talking about sanctuary cities, John. And joining us now to talk about this even more is Tricia McLaughlin, former deputy secretary there under Homeland Security. And, Tricia, before we get to New Jersey, we were just talking, why are they not going after members of Congress or others who are interfering with federal law? I mean, it's really interesting. On sanctuary cities, we got these people out there, even at the New Jersey Center, protesting outside, including LaMonica MacGyver, who got charged with assaulting an officer last year.
Yeah, that's the same facility, Delaney Hall, and just about a year ago. And I think we all need to pray that this doesn't get any more physical or escalate any further. But I mean, we're seeing these political stunts from these very desperate politicians, and it's our ICE agents, it's the detainees themselves, and it's the staff who their security is what's paying their security and safety is what's paying the price. But Rita, what we're not hearing from anybody on the left, which is a complete disservice to these migrants, is the fact that no detainee needs to be in that facility at all, because they could take $2,600 and a free flight home and self-deport. And yet we're not hearing that at all. Instead, we're hearing these fake stunts about food strikes and that there's abuse going on in the facility, which has been completely debunked by Secretary Mullen and by the Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah, and the big issue, by the way, to remind everybody, and John, you and I were talking about this yesterday, Secretary Mullen was asked about it. He said they're upset because they're not getting the certain kind of ethnic food. They're getting the ethnic food. It's not like they're violating religious rights. It's just not exactly. Some of them wanted a little different. Maybe they want truffle salt on it or lobster or something.
More salt or
right.
more...
Yeah, more salt, more escargot or
Did
something.
Did somebody tell them this is not the Waldorf Astoria?
Yeah, I think they missed that, right? And so, I mean, come on, when you sit there and you hear it, you go, this is, they have 24-hour nutritionists. They have dental care. I wish I could have 24-hour nutritionists and dental care. I mean, this is incredible.
No kidding. And by the way, I mean, the medical precautions, the medical care that these detainees are receiving is better than a lot of Americans receive. And this is on American taxpayer dime. Like you said, 3 square meals a day. These people have access to lawyers, to call family members, even entertainment. I've been to probably dozens of these detention facilities during my time at the Department of Homeland Security. I will say they are, the standards there are higher than a lot of U.S. detention facilities holding actual American citizens. So, I'd like to see Andy Kim or LaMonica McIver actually go to a jail or prison holding some of their actual constituents who are U.S. citizens. Instead, these are political stunts, and they're just trying to drive up chaos. They saw it was successful in Minneapolis, and they want to bring that to New Jersey and Delaney Hall and really interfere with the operations at these detention facilities.
Judge Weinberg.
Tricia, good to talk to you again. It seems to me that the Congress, when you have members of the House who are doing this, they're obstructing lawful work by the ICE officials at these detention centers, should call them in and they can have them expelled from the Congress under their rules. Have a hearing and expel them.
I absolutely agree with you. This has been going on for far too long. Our ICE law enforcement officers, they're just simply enforcing the rule of law that was passed by Congress, and yet you don't see any actual efforts by these members to pass any kind of legislation. Instead, it's just more political antics. And like I said earlier, this really does imperil the officers. It imperils the detainees themselves. And it's a problem across the board for the supply chain of these migrants as far as getting food into those facilities, getting resources that these people do need. And so they're causing danger. And they'll do it on the backs of law enforcement.
So at the end of the day, who decides this sanctuary city stuff?
Ultimately, it's going to have to be a judicial determination that there is no such thing under the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution as a sanctuary city. That's what the federal courts have to do. That
Supreme Court eventually.
Yeah, ultimately, yes. It has to go through the U.S. District Court, the Circuit Court, then the United States Supreme Court. But once and for all, they should declare that this nullification doctrine ended with the Civil War in the United States.
If there's people in New Jersey abusing federal agents, shouldn't the federal agents arrest those people?
Of course.
And in fact, it was so scary, Tricia. I was thinking exactly what John was saying, that they were swearing. I mean, I just watched video before I came on the show of these, I think Antifa or some other folks screaming at these agents, trying to rip their masks off, saying, "We want to kill you and your families."
This is not protected First Amendment.
Right. This is not peaceful.
This is insurrection.
Exactly. And your everyday crazy is not going to be able to distinguish between ICE or CBP or any other local or state law enforcement officer. So it's not just putting our immigration enforcement, law enforcement in danger and in jeopardy. This puts other law enforcement in danger and in jeopardy. We've seen that across the board. As assaults against ICE rise, so do they rise against local and state law enforcement.
Governor Patterson.
I wanted to ask Judge Weinberg to talk a little more about the nullification doctrine, because it's very important to this conversation.
Well, it's very simple. That the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution says that federal law trumps, forgive the pun, trumps the local and state law. And they cannot declare themselves a sanctuary city immune from the immigration laws. The federal government has a right to enforce the immigration laws. Same way Eisenhower had the right to enforce the federal laws with respect to desegregation of the colleges and the universities.
So, Judge, let me ask you the $64 million question. How come it's not going through who's challenging it? Because you would think it's been around these, quote, sanctuary cities for a while.
Well, good question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's time to do that. Sanctuary city officials should be held accountable. So if a mayor thinks or she thinks that it's above, their rights that as an employee of the local government to abide by the federal law, they should immediately be arrested.
Yeah. So Tricia, what do you think?
Just arrest the mayor. Just arrest the mayor. Say, you say it's a sanctuary city? Okay, you're now under arrest. Litigate it.
Yeah. So Tricia, how come that hasn't happened? Because to me, it makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, I think it's a great question for the Department of Justice. I think the Trump administration is probably leery of escalating things much farther from a political perspective, just given that we know the left, we know these Democrat senators and politicians, they want to see chaos. That's what drives up their base, and that's what drives up the media. So I think that there's a political calculation going on, but we have seen Brad Landers, of course, LaMonica McIver, but some of these other politicians have been arrested in the last year for doing just that, laying hands on law enforcement or obstructing justice.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a few. It's interesting, Tricia, but you're right. On the other hand, if they don't do something, then they feel they can get away with it, too.
That's exactly right, Rita. The longer you allow it to happen, and to your point, the governor's point, the more you allow it to happen, the more it will happen.
Right. It's sort of like allowing bad behavior.
Your Honor, I've got a number of friends not talking to me last night because if you remember, our legislature in New York passed legislation that the local authorities do not have to cooperate with ICE. And I don't know where they get that presumption from.
Again, I think that's unconstitutional. I think that should be litigated. I think Blakeman, who's running as a Republican candidate for governor, says that he's going to put together a group and challenge that. Kathy Hochul and the legislature had no right to do that. Once again, it falls under the Supremacy Clause. Good point, Governor.
Yeah, Tricia, final thoughts from you. We always love hearing from you.
I agree with all of you. I think especially as we had the summer heat, we know that there tends to be more protests, more riots. I think we got to get this thing under control, or else things are going to escalate. If that means arresting some of these politicians who are breaking the law, we say no one's above the law, and that's what's got to be done.
Yeah, I agree, because I do worry, especially when you see the rhetoric, even after a few days at that facility there in New Jersey, it is completely out of control. Tricia, thank you very much. It's always great to hear from you and have you on, and we look forward to having you on again soon.
Great to be with you guys. God bless you.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank you.
And who do we have now? We're going to a break. Let's go to a break first. And then after a break, we're going to have more breaking news because John Solomon has a lot of breaking news.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC. Breaking news, WABC.
And John joining us now with some big breaking news is John Solomon. Always has some great scoops. What do you got, John?
Well, this is, I think, going to be a very consequential day in election integrity. Early this morning, a federal judge in Washington, D.C. turned down the Democratic Party's request for a temporary injunction against President Trump's crackdown, the executive order cracking down on extensive mail-in voting in some states. That crackdown includes an effort by the federal government to compare state voter rolls with citizenship to make sure that non-citizens aren't voting. We're seeing a growing number of criminal cases of non-citizens being caught cheating and voting in elections. The judge not only refused to give the injunction blocking President Trump from doing this, he went line by line through the Democrats' arguments and debunked them, something he didn't have to do. But he basically said, hey, there's no evidence that you've been harmed. There's no evidence that's going to be harmful to people. There's no evidence that if someone is misidentified as a non-citizen that they can't appeal and quickly get back their voting rights. So he went through and created a very substantial judicial record of litigating the issues behind the issue. That's going to put it on the fast track to the appeals court and potentially to the United States Supreme Court, which means President Trump's ability to crack down on mail-in voting and to do citizenship checks may get to the Supreme Court still this summer, a very big moment. A lot of people are just beginning to realize how significant an event this was today in this court with this judge. Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Bessent was very clear today. Iran is not going to have sanctions relieved until they hand over their enriched uranium. Anyone who thinks the deal that President Trump and the U.S. reached today for a 60-day ceasefire includes giving them money or sanctions relief, not happening, according to Secretary Bessent, until enriched uranium is turned over. That story is getting a lot of attention as well. And then we've had some back and forth with Iran, a few military missiles going in both directions. We have the upper hand. We've knocked down their drones with them. But there is signs that Iran is trying to antagonize the United States during this negotiation. It'll be very interesting to see how tonight plays out. The U.S. military
is it the chimpanzees or the gorillas? I mean, there's two factions there.
That's it. There are multiple factions. Actually, there may be more than two. There might be 3 or 4 now.
The orangutans.
Yeah, there you go. We got the whole family. It's pretty clear that our decimation of their leadership has left them decentralized even more than normal. And that is, I think, creating some difficulty for the Americans. We don't know who to negotiate with. That's a pretty hard deal to deal with. But I do think that whatever happens, people are watching very closely tonight to see if there's another round of attacks or whether Iran backs down because of this tentative deal that was reached today. We're still waiting for President Trump to say he signed off on it, but his negotiating team has, and I think that's a really good sign. So those are just some of the big stories that we're watching. One other one is a report out there. We've been able to confirm it. The Justice Department has apparently begun a criminal investigation for perjury or false testimony against E. Jean Carroll, the woman who accused President Trump of sexual assault. That is an interesting development. I don't think a lot of people saw that one coming. We don't know what provided the genesis for that, maybe a whistleblower, maybe some new evidence, but we're trying to get more on that. But that's another one that people are taking a close look at.
And John, you also had some interesting stuff on DOJ officials raising red flags about Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to talk to you about that since we broke that a couple of days ago. I think, so let's remind everybody where we were a year ago, which was Merrick Garland said everybody was on board with raiding Mar-a-Lago, and I personally signed off it because everyone was good with it. Then we got a couple of months ago, we broke the story that the FBI had all these emails, its Washington field office, very clearly stating and warning they did not believe they had met the standard for a search warrant, which is probable cause. That was a big red flag. No one had ever heard that before. Now we know that the FBI did not believe they had probable cause to raid Mar-a-Lago. They did it anyways. Well, now we have gotten a new memo, from one of the top senior advisors to Merrick Garland, someone Merrick Garland brought in specifically to advise him to make sure they handled the Trump cases appropriately. That email shows she was not told in advance that they were going to raid Mar-a-Lago, and as soon as she found out about it, she became concerned. In fact, she said her email says, I can't stop thinking about this.
John, who is this hit squad that was doing this?
Well, that is a question. Who was in charge? And if Merrick Garland was in charge, the people around him clearly didn't see that. And so what this woman writes, and this is very important because this is something I've been consistently reporting since 2022 when the president gave me a statement on this. The president has always claimed he declassified the documents that were taken to Mar-a-Lago, that he had this standing order that if he took something to the residence, it was declassified. If he's going to work at night, the document would be declassified so he can move it out of the safe space of the Oval Office, which is where you can read classified information, and that anything that was in his residence had been declassified, and therefore there was no basis. This woman seizes on that. This 30-year career official who, by the way, is respected by Democrats and Republicans alike, very accomplished prosecutor, saying, I think the president has a point here. Has anyone checked into this? And she said she was so concerned about it, she couldn't stop thinking about how wrong this raid may have been. That is now you have 2 documents that show that the raid on Mar-a-Lago.
You had to have a little bit of a bunch of sickos doing it if they're going through Melania's underwear drawer.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Maybe the effect was to embarrass the president not to carry out a lawful search warrant. But why is this significant now? There's a grand jury that is in Florida, and in order for it to bring a grand conspiracy case, it has to have 2 acts that occurred in Florida. We now know there are 2 different pieces of proof. The FBI and one of Garland's top people thinking that the raid was not righteous, not legal, not lawful, not proper. That really creates now the opportunity for Joe DeGenova and for Jason and his team down in Florida they now have proof of a potential crime that occurred on Florida soil, which now allows him to go back and charge anything that occurred before that. So this is significant, not just from a historical footnote and to get everybody upset about the deep state. It could give the venue now for the Florida grand jury to look at the whole 10-year decade as a Florida-based crime.
Oh, that's interesting. Ed Cox.
John, the whole backdrop of this is the Presidential Records Act that was passed under Jimmy Carter. And it provides that the president always has a right, whether classified or not, to those records. While they technically belong to the archives, the president has a right to them, and that's unique to a president.
That's right. And by the way, if it was just a presidential records dispute, it normally dealt with civilly. And normally they tried to criminalize this by saying he had the same problem as Joe Biden. And what we're really seeing now is that just like Russia collusion was an effort to cover up for the fact that Hillary Clinton had a problem on Russia with Bill Clinton, when they found that Joe Biden had classified documents he should not have had all the way back to his Senate years, and they were by the Corvette at his home and in his University of Pennsylvania office, they concocted something to make it look like Donald Trump had the same problem. But the problem is President Trump had a different status. And this woman lays in fact, he says the president didn't need to follow a process. If he said they're declassified, they're declassified.
Right.
He seized on she was basically saying Donald Trump's defense was right. We didn't know that for 4 years. We were kept in the dark.
That's amazing. Judge Weinberg.
John, I'm flabbergasted by this. This is great reporting on your part. So let me tell you, as a judge who issued a lot of search warrants in my time, the agents have to come in, backed by the prosecutor. They have to show probable cause. A good judge goes through the affidavit, examines the agent, the case agent, what the basis is, and then he or she then rules whether there is probable cause to issue a warrant. So what you want to do is you want to get a hold of that supporting affidavit or affidavits that try to make out the case for probable cause and to see if there's any fraud in that.
Right. What was the claim?
No, that's what's the basis of the problem. So you want to look at, was there a material misrepresentation or fraud there, the same way that kid got the FISA court by fudging the documents.
Right, that's what I was just thinking. Same thing.
This is fascinating stuff, John. Go to it.
Somebody has to go to jail.
On the money.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys, if they had no permission from anybody, and they go to Mar-a-Lago and they go through the underwear drawer. I mean, these are sickos.
Yeah, or made false representations.
No. They had the question is, John, to your point. Yeah. They had authority because they had a judicial order.
That's my question. So did they make a false representation?
Was there a fraud on the court? Did they mislead the judge?
Right, because you would think a judge would go, okay, but maybe what was presented to the judge, it was not accurate.
That's exactly right. With what actually happened.
If they represented, they had probable cause when the FBI said they didn't, and when their top legal advisor said they didn't. Right. That is where this is headed. And we're pretty certain from the reporting I've done since that story broke that that's exactly what Joe DeGenova and his team is focused on down in Florida. This is a pretty important story. I think it could have long-term ramifications for how the last 10 years are looked at. Was there a chronic wash, rinse, repeat cycle where the FBI and the Justice Department violated the law just to get Donald Trump, as Alan Dershowitz says, get Trump? So I think we're moving into a more serious phase of that investigation. And these pieces of evidence, and these are what they call smoking guns, I think, in a lot of common parlance.
Yeah, keep us posted.
Thank you,
this
John.
is a bombshell, John. Thank you, John. We miss you.
Great to be with you guys. Love the show, as you know.
We love you. Thank you, John, very much. Thanks a lot. And you guys, now let's go to the big headlines of the day, sponsored by
Goya Foods. I love those Goya beans and that Goya olive oil.
Yum.
It's the top news of the day, sponsored by Goya. Here's Rita Cosby.
And guys, here are some of the big headlines of the day. Multiple reports that the U.S. and Iran have reached a deal to extend the ceasefire. However, it has not been officially confirmed by the White House, but multiple sources and multiple reports out there, as you heard from John, are saying that is indeed the case. However, the president still does have to sign off on it, so it's subject to his approval. Now, according to the reports, the two countries have a 60-day memorandum of understanding that would reopen the Strait of Hormuz and start more intense negotiations on Iran's nuclear program. And in the political world, a high-profile Democrat says she is not running for president in 2028. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer shared the news in a recent interview with WJBK-TV and noted that she looks forward to taking a break after she leaves office. Michigan will elect a new governor in the fall as Whitmer is term limited. And those are the big headlines. We're going to talk to the great investigative journalist Peter Schweizer in just a few minutes, right after the break.
Recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Cats and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Cats and Cosby. So who is funding all of these, I call them anti-American protests that are taking place across America? And also this comes as Hassan Piker, the guy who said America deserved 9/11. That was lovely. Well, he is now being investigated by the Department of Justice for a trip to Cuba. So who better to put this all together than the great investigative journalist, Peter Schweizer. He's also president of the Government Accountability Institute. Peter, fill us in on all.
Yeah, I think the story that people have to wrap their hands around is the fact that a lot of what we're seeing, whether it's Piker, his actions in Cuba, whether it's these protests, there's a massive foreign component to this. Foreign governments, foreign entities are looking to destabilize America. And that's not just rhetoric. That's just based on the money trail and the evidence. We've talked about him before, and I'm going to mention him again, Roy Singham. This is the American billionaire. I'll put American because that's where he was born, but he lives in Shanghai, China. He set up a foundation that is funding a lot of these groups, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. Look at what's happening right now at that ICE detention facility in New Jersey. The groups that have been camped out there for months trying to prevent them from conducting their business affairs are those two organizations, and they are being funded by Roy Singham, who has a foundation called the People's Foundation that has $165 million in assets, and he's using it to fund a lot of these protests. And Hassan Piker has even said that Roy Singham has funded some of his activities. So that's just the beginning of it. But I think what people have to understand, this is not just a organic protest. This is an organized effort to trigger violence and to trigger instability in the United States.
So, Peter, how come there hasn't been like any charges? Because using foreign funds, if it turns out it's that obviously opens the door. And then you got Hassan Piker, this guy who's been hanging around with Mandani. He's hanging around with El Sayed, the guy in Michigan who says some really horrible things. And you look at this guy, and he was over there. He's using this guy's money, if it turns out it's foreign funds, and he's over there berating the American administration. He claimed he was there on a humanitarian mission, and yet it looked like it was a political mission. You see him on his own Instagram bashing America, bashing the Trump administration policy, saying, look what's happening to beautiful, Cuba. This is terrible. I mean, isn't there some sort of legal, recourse here?
There's some. One is the Foreign Agents Registration Act. If you are engaged in political activities in the United States and you are receiving funds or you are coordinating with foreign governments, you are supposed to register with the U.S. Department of Justice, so everybody's aware of it. Failure to do so means you are committing a felony. So they are looking, I think that's what they're looking at Hassan Piker for. And by the way, this claim that, it's just humanitarian, Cuba has been involved for a very long time in developing cells in the United States. They have this program they're called the Vincent Ramos Brigades. They bring young, sort of college-age students to Cuba. They give them the revolutionary fervor, and then they call on them later as political allies. And you've got people like Karen Bass, the current mayor of Los Angeles, was somebody who went through the Vincent Ramos Brigades program, which is run by the Cuban Communist Party. And Hassan Piker, as much as he wants to say he was there for humanitarian purposes, maybe that was part of it. The other part of it, I have no doubt, was political coordination. Cuba is desperate to survive. Their system does not work. It has not worked for a long time. They've been able to linger on because they got cheap or free oil from Venezuela and from Iran. Guess what? Because of Donald Trump's foreign policy, that oil is not coming anymore. That's why Cuba's in a desperate state. And what they need is they need activists in the United States to prevent or try to prevent American foreign policy from taking its course. But I think they're going to fail. But it's a reminder, again, whenever you see protests, whenever you see this kind of activity, we need to be weary and remind ourselves who gains from this. We are in a global world, not just a global economy, and that means these political movements are operating in our country as well, and they're trying to distort our foreign policy for their ends.
It's really scary stuff. Peter, thank you. Please keep us posted. You know this stuff better than anybody. Thank you, Peter.
Always good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
You too. Thank you, Peter, so much. And you guys, Joe Biden, we were talking about all the Biden stuff and classified documents. Well, Joe Biden right now is he's suing the Department of Justice saying, do not release. He's trying to block the release of the conversations he had with his author, where Robert Hur says in the conversation, I'm going now to get my classified documents. Oh, here they are. I brought them from downstairs. And then apparently he read verbatim from the classified documents.
Oh, my God.
And then remember, Joe Biden, John, never got charged with it. Remember, he said it was an elderly, well-meaning man. And yet we just talked about what happened to President Trump. Well, who better to talk about all of this than Fox News senior legal analyst, best-selling author Greg Jarrett. Greg, so what's going to happen with this case with Joe Biden? Because he doesn't want those conversations to come out.
Yeah, I don't think Biden is going to win. He's suing to keep his self-incriminating tape recordings hidden from the American people who have a right to know, to listen to them, to determine whether he was lying over and over again when he insisted, I never shared top secret classified information with anyone. Well, in point of fact, he did. And those conversations with his ghostwriter, in which he's sharing top secret information, it's on the tapes. And that's confirmed by the special counsel, Robert Hur, who listened to the tapes. And the public is entitled to hear them for themselves. Biden's claim that, these tapes are personal and private, that's utterly absurd. It's not what the law says, because the tapes were obtained lawfully by consent in a criminal investigation, which means that Biden does not have a Fourth Amendment privacy interest in them. The tapes are in the public and prosecutorial domain, and that strips away any privacy protections by law. Not only that, Biden was sharing the classified contents of documents that are owned not by him, but owned by the government. Yet he kept telling the special counsel, these are my documents. No, they're not. He stole them. And the government eventually seized them and took them back. So you don't get to hide behind privacy rights when you steal government records. It's as simple as that. So I have no doubt that the judge will, in the end, rule against Biden and release the tapes to the public.
Also, he wasn't president at the time.
Yeah, he had no legal right to have those documents in his possession, period.
Yeah, I'm looking at the deadline. The audio tape was 2017. He had no right to have it at that point.
No, but a vice president, as Ed Cox has pointed out, the vice president of the United States has no capacity at all.
That's
to
my
hold those
point.
Documents. Only a president of the United States.
Exactly. And he was reading it to an author. It wasn't like he was reading it to the president of the United States. He was reading it to an author at the time.
So this was a document in 2017 when he's out of office.
It dates all the way
he was
back.
only a vice president.
Yeah, he's only a vice president when he was reading these documents to an author.
It dates back all the way to 2007 because he used those tapes and those documents for two different books in 2007, 2017. He
was senator. That's the other thing, right?
He stole some of the documents as a U.S. senator. So he has absolutely no protection under the Presidential Records Act. He should have been charged for violating the Espionage Act, clear-cut case. He was only spared because he was being investigated by his own Department of Justice, and, the fix was in, and, it was a crooked cover-up. And they used the excuse, now famously quoted, that he is a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. Try to understand the paradox there. A man who's supposedly incompetent to stand trial, but somehow competent to be president of the United States. I mean, it's absurd.
By the way, it comes also as all this news is breaking about Jill Biden. I'm sure you heard that, where Jill Biden says when she saw him during the debate, that was the famous 2024 debate. She said, I thought he had a stroke. But then she said he was cognizant. She had never seen him like that before or after. It was just during that one debate.
That's got to be a lie, too.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be, right?
Was she lying first, middle, or after, or all the above? Greg,
It was a Claude Rains moment from Casablanca, right? I'm shocked to see my husband mentally frail and fumbling. Of course she knew all along. She was the leader of the cover-up for years.
Right. I mean, come on. He had a lapse suddenly because the whole world saw it. I mean, my goodness. Judge Weinberg.
So Greg, I want to ask you a legal question. So the Secretary of Homeland Security now says if you want to be a sanctuary city, then we have a right to stop international planes from landing at airports in these sanctuary cities. What are your thoughts about the authority of DHS and the federal government to do that?
Well, it's an interesting subject. By law, airlines cannot offload international travelers unless customs officials are present at the airport to conduct the inspection. So if DHS withdraws those agents, and I think they have grounds to do that, those airports lose their ability to handle international arrivals. And as you know, Judge, states have no authority over federal officials, and under the Supremacy Clause in the Constitution, federal law supersedes any state action or state law.
Exactly right.
Now, of course, you also know, Judge, that the states will rush to the nearest courthouse to get a judge to issue a stay and, force CBP to remain at their post. They'll conjure up all kinds of arguments. It's punitive, irreparable harm, violates administrative procedures, who knows. But the litigation would be immediate. It would be intensive. I think Congress might also get involved to draft legislation to block DHS. I know Mullen is getting pushback from Sean Duffy, the Secretary of Transportation. Ultimately, I think the president is going to have to make a decision on this. But look, sanctuary cities and states have brought this on themselves. They refuse to cooperate. They actively interfere.
You get off the plane, Greg, you get off the plane from a foreign jurisdiction, and then you disappear into the streets of America, and then forces ICE to chase you down in the streets.
That's right, and then the states barricade the feds from coming in and out of facilities, preventing them from doing their job, which is enforcing federal law. By the way, that is a crime, as you know, impeding and interfering in federal enforcement. Also, harboring illegals, that's another crime. I've written a stream of columns saying it's about time we start arresting these state officials who were doing this.
Absolutely.
Now, let's go back to New Jersey for a second. And, I mean, these people are...
Do I have to come back to New Jersey?
No, we apologize. We apologize.
We're sorry.
We apologize.
We're sorry, Greg.
Why isn't the federal officials arresting the people that are abusing them?
Well, they should be. Look, as I say, there are two federal statutes, harboring illegals and interfering in their arrest. You can't do that, and those are crimes. And way back in the beginning of the Trump administration's first term, I wrote several columns saying, let's arrest these people. And it never happened, and it's still not happening. And frankly, I think that's the only solution.
I agree, Greg, because, I mean, there are so many great people there in New Jersey. They deserve to be safe. And yet, the focus for politicians, it seems, on the Democratic side is going after this detention center and the officials there, blocking the roadways, shouting, screaming, so they can't get in or out. I mean, you could make a lot of justifications there.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you 100%. It's been a disappointment that the feds haven't taken this more seriously. You know, a lot of talk, but no action.
I agree. Greg, we always love having you. Thank you, Greg Jarrett. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Let's go to General
Blaine Holt.
Right now.
Yeah, we love him. All right, General Holt, are you there with us?
I am here, loud and clear.
Hey,
listening to Greg.
Yeah, very interesting discussion. So, with you, what do you think is going to happen? We're now hearing that there might be, it looks like, this extension of the ceasefire. It's like the first phase, and then it goes to a 60 days. Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, is saying they got to open the Strait of Hormuz. All these things have to happen, but the door seems to be opening. How do you read this? Is this Iran buying time?
Well, this is the 15th plan that we've heard in 15 days.
I thought it was 60 or 70.
Here's the net effect. The net effect is that the war is on, the war is off, the war is back on. Big ceasefire. No, not such a big ceasefire. No, Oman's going to control the straits. All that does is stabilize the oil's futures markets, because all of these algorithmic traders from the financialists and the banks, they're getting slaughtered by social media posts and press conferences, which actually is quite refreshing. It's very, very good, because they are, if you want to look at the City of London, an adversary in this through the Lloyds of London scheme that's always been there. So what's really going to happen? What's really going to happen is, yes, we'll banter back and forth about what the terms are, but I think you'll see military action no matter what happens to finish off the IRGC, open up the straits, open up Karg Island, get that oil freed up, and encourage the Iranian people to take back their country once and for all. That's what I see as signal through all this noise.
Yeah, and when do you see that may be happening?
It'll be out of the blue. We'll all be convinced that Regachi and President Trump are going to love each other and sign on some bottom line. And all of a sudden, you're going to see all kinds of coastal vessels get lit up like a Christmas tree. You're going to see some bombs hit besieged headquarters. And then you'll see some rather tough diplomacy. And all of a sudden, there'll be probably 2 or 3 new Iranians that we've never seen before who are like, yeah, we've been negotiating the whole time. We're in charge. By the way, all that nuclear material, United States, it's yours. I think we'll start seeing that, if not in a week or 2, maybe days. But I think this is the next steps. And President Trump's misdirection, his deception, and all of that from the bully pulpit has been masterful. So I don't want you to think he's being glib or coy. He is playing financialists that are betting against him and the United States while he manages this crisis to a very good place.
Well, General Holt, thank you for the update, and let's talk again real soon, because this is not a day-by-day thing. It's almost an hour-by-hour thing.
It is, quite intentionally, and I'm always at your service.
Thank you
so much. And let's take a break right now, and we're going to come back. Well, what's going on in Albany? Melissa DeRosa, she's one tough gal.
Common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. A lot happening in Albany. And joining us now to talk about that is Melissa DeRosa, of course, former senior aide to then Governor Cuomo. Melissa, what do you make of this? Of course, they passed that second home tax. That's a mess.
Hey guys, great to be with you. So another day in New York, another, run on out-migration, I think is what we're getting out of this budget. As people may or may not know, this budget is 2 months late, so it's the latest the budget has been in 16 years, and it continues to increase spending in the billions. And Zoran Mamdani walked away with both a bailout from Albany, which will, in the short term, plug the gap that exists in the New York City budget, which, as John has said many times, is larger than the budget of Florida, even though Florida has 24 million people, and New York City has 8.5. And they gave him his pied-à-terre tax. Now, the pied-à-terre tax is the way that they structured this is it's going to be in 2 phases, because there's really no easy way to implement this, because as most people know, your property tax assessment bears little reality to your apartment or your condo or your co-op's actual value. So what they decided to do was they decided to, in the first tranche, which takes effect on July 1st, so in 5 weeks, is any apartment that it has a tax assessed value at $1 million or more gets, I think it's a 4.5% tax if it's a second home. And they are going to figure out if it's a second home, and then it's incumbent on the homeowner to challenge that if it's not your second home, if it is in fact your primary residence.
So in other words, they send you a bill and they put a lien on your property, and then you say you defend it.
Exactly. Then you hire a lawyer, and then you fight, the state on whether or not you should have to pay this tax. Now, I was so that's just a disaster to begin with, and the numbers that they're starting at, the $1 million number to start at, and then it, incrementally gets bigger at $5.5 million. It kicks into like 5.5%. And on and on. But the numbers they're talking about are astronomical in terms of what people are going to have to pay on top of a mansion tax, on top of a real estate transfer tax, on top of the property taxes they're already paying. But I was also speaking to a couple of CEOs of top residential real estate firms here in New York today. And what we can expect is there's going to be a number of lawsuits that are brought challenging this tax, because people originally bought these apartments when this tax didn't exist. So they bought it under false pretenses. And there's going to be challenges in court that get filed between now and July 1st as to the constitutionality of whether or not you can even implement this tax and change the rules of the game after you've purchased this apartment. That was the first thing I heard repeatedly today. So look out for that. That's going to be coming. And then the second thing that I heard is that deals are already being pulled. So one of the CEOs I spoke to today was telling me that she had heard from a number of her brokers in the last 24 hours from people who were either on the cusp of signing contracts or who have already signed a contract but haven't closed, saying, I want out. So I think that we have, you always ask the question, what's the tipping point? When do we reach the tipping point? And all of these economists want to come out and say, these lefty economists want to come out and say it's overstated that if you tax people, they're going to leave. That's a myth. It's not a myth. And it is definitely not a myth post-COVID. And it's definitely not a myth post-COVID when you can work anywhere and be anywhere, and you've got a socialist mayor who you don't have faith in, who's alienating businesses and taunting people like Ken Griffin. And people have a lot of questions about quality of life and public safety moving forward and the overall direction of the city. And it's not a myth when you're already in the most taxed locality in the country and you have the opportunity to be other places. So the people that I'm speaking to that are literally dealing with this on the ground in real time are telling me there are going to be very real ramifications to this in terms of people canceling contracts, getting out of deals, bailing on contracts they've already signed and eating the penalty. But also, I think we're going to see a number of lawsuits that are filed between now and July 1, in which case this tax may never end up going into effect at all.
Yeah.
Or else, maybe it can be prospective.
We're over time. We're into Mark Levin's time. Governor.
Real quick.
Governor Patterson, you have a quickie?
So, of course, the legislature is decided to rule on whether or not local governments can deal with the ICE agents and the ICE program, when it should be very clear that these are federal interventions, and how the state could supervise it is out of the question.
No, I agree with you. And I think also they're going to do the thing. They're going to tempt Homan now to deploy more people here, and they're going to justify it based on this.
Homan will be on our show tomorrow.
Yeah, Homan's joining us tomorrow, so that'll be an interesting topic.
Yeah, I have a feeling he'll make some news on your program off of this.
Yeah, I do too.
We'll talk again real soon, Melissa. And
Melissa, thank you so much, Melissa.
We have to
go.
Right.
Thank you.
What do we stand for?
Truth, justice, and the American way.
Thanks for listening to Cats and Cosby with John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. You can hear Cats and Cosby weekdays at 5. It's the 5 o'clock show on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?